talk about the New York Jets and let's talk about Justin Fields together because when I look at this situation with Justin Fields and the Jets, it's very interesting. I thought for sure that Justin Fields was going to go back to the Steelers, but instead he signed with the Jets, 2 years, $40 million, $30 million fully guaranteed. They can front load this contract and they can move off of him after a year. It's a prove it type of contract with Justin Fields. If he plays solid enough, they can hold on to him for the next 2 to 3 years. If he doesn't, you can move off of him. It's a good deal for the Jets because the Jets are getting a young quarterback that's 26 years old, has a very good deep ball, and has great mobility. And they don't need to spend a first, second, or even a third round pick at the quarterback position. They could take another swing in this position in next year's draft class. So you have Justin Fields. The problem is this with Justin. He is not fully developed just yet, and he may just be capped out as what he is right now as a quarterback. When I look at the career of Justin Fields, it has not been fair to him, but usually that's how things go with young quarterbacks in the NFL. Justin Fields was drafted to the Chicago Bears in the first round in 2021, and he did not have that much success with the Chicago Bears. A lot of it is on the player. The player has to step up. They have to make the right throws. They have to have the pocket awareness in the NFL. I fully understand that. But at the same time, the Chicago Bears never built a true team around Justin Fields. They never went out there and tried to put the right pieces around Justin Fields. You had a terrible head coach in Matt Nagy, a terrible offensive play caller. You move off of Matt Nagy, you bring in a defensive head coach in Matt Eberflus. He's downright terrible. He's still a defensive coordinator in the NFL, but he's no longer a head coach. He just got fired at the halfway point of the previous season because he didn't want to use a timeout against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving Day. But he was a terrible head coach with Justin Fields, and Justin Fields had some bright moments with him. And you had Luke Getsy as his offensive coordinator. So in back-to-back years, he has brand new coordinators. And Luke Getsy was terrible also. Matt Nagy was a horrible head coach, was a horrible play caller. He goes back to the Kansas City Chiefs. You never built a true offensive line around Justin Fields. He was tired of being the most sacked quarterback in the NFL with Russell Wilson when Russell Wilson had his first season with the Denver Broncos. And I'm not going to come on here and argue against this. He does hold on to the football for too long at times. He will have some plays that make you just scratch your head and say, Justin Fields, the wide receiver is wide open, just pull the trigger. He will have those type of plays. But at that point in time, we're talking about a 22, 23-year-old quarterback. He's now 26 years old. But when I look at Justin Fields, when he went to the Steelers, when they traded him to the Steelers and he went 4-2, he had some solid moments. He was not able to go out there and fully put the offense on his back, but he doesn't have to do that. And Arthur Smith is not a good offensive coordinator either, even though he has had success in the NFL with the Tennessee Titans. This is the thing with Justin Fields. And this is where I have a lot of criticism for him because right now I'm shielding him with bad coaching, bad environments with the Chicago Bears. He went to a Steelers organization. There's structure there with Coach Tomlin. I know the wide receivers can go crazy, but the Steelers, they make the NFL playoffs. They haven't won a playoff game since 2016. We're talking about them as a regular season team. They're going to go above 500 with Coach Tomlin. Justin Fields did not do good enough in those 6 games. They placed in Russell Wilson. The offense looked better from a passing standpoint. His accuracy has to be better. And he has gotten more accurate over the last 3 to 4 years. But when I look at Justin Fields, he is still not an elite passer. He may never be. But he has to work on that timing. He has to work on his anticipation. It's too many times on film to where the wide receiver is wide open and he sees him, but it's a delay there. So by the time he rips the football, the defender is already caught up. It's a delay with his processing. He has to develop as a passer inside the pocket if he wants to find that success with the New York Jets. And this is also another problem. He did not have that much talent with the Chicago Bears. Bad offensive line. He did have Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney, but Darnell Mooney is not a true number 1 wide receiver. And when he was a rookie, he only started the back half of the season. Remember, they had Andy Dalton being the starting quarterback. Allen Robinson was his number 1. At that point in time, he fell off a cliff. Allen Robinson was a number 1 wide receiver with Mitch Trubisky. He was not the same when Justin Fields came to the game. And it's not because Justin Fields was a terrible passer. He fell off the cliff even with Andy Dalton starting games. And that's a solid veteran option to have as a backup. So his best receivers were Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet at the tight end spot, and DJ Moore when they finally made that trade with the Carolina Panthers. Then he goes over to the Steelers. You only have one option to throw the football to, and that was George Pickens. And when I look at the New York Jets right now, this is what concerns me with the fact that he went to this organization. For one, this organization, they can't develop young quarterbacks. We have seen this with Sam Darnold. We've seen this with Zach Wilson. We've seen this with Geno Smith. They haven't had a great quarterback in many decades. The last time this team had a winning season was in 2015. But when I look at Justin Fields, you're entering a dangerous situation because of this. You only have one true number one wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. Allen Lazard had a solid year, 530 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns, but that's with Aaron Rodgers. And there was a report that came out 2 years ago. They were going to bring him in regardless if they wanted to go out there and bring in Aaron Rodgers or not. Allen Lazard, that first year with the Jets, he was unplayable. He was a healthy scratch. Comes over to year number 2, Nathaniel Hackett, terrible play caller to go to Ty Downing. He performs a little bit better. But even at that point in time, they brought in Devontae Adams. They had Mike Williams on the roster. Maybe there's something there with Allen Lazard, but he's not going to be your true number 2 on a consistent basis. You have to go out there and draft another wide receiver to help out Justin Fields. I know that he has that connection with Garrett Wilson in college. Just because you had a great rapport in college doesn't mean that's going to translate over to the NFL. Devontae Adams learned that the hard way with Derek Carr, and he still put up good numbers with the Raiders. We're talking about wins here. I don't think the New York Jets are going to be a perennial contender in this division with Justin Fields, but it can't get any worse than it was with Aaron Rodgers. From a locker room standpoint, Aaron Rodgers right now, and this may be a bit of a controversial take, but this is my opinion. He's a better passer, and right now he's a better quarterback option for certain teams than Justin Fields. Aaron Rodgers still put up solid numbers with the New York Jets. They lost a lot of football games this season, not just because of Aaron Rodgers. You had penalties with the offensive line. The field goal kicker missed some kicks, especially against the Denver Broncos and against the Buffalo Bills. You had some moments this year to win some games with Aaron Rodgers. But the outside forces just didn't allow it to happen. And then the fact that you fire your head coach at the beginning portion of the season and you go with Coach Brick, who was not ready to be an interim head coach just yet. He was in over his head and they pushed him into being in that spot. They should have stuck things out with Robert Saleh even if you weren't going to have a winning season. That comes down from the ownership. And now it's a complete turnaround because you're bringing in Aaron Glenn. This is his first year as a head coach. He has never been a head coach before in the NFL. He was a very good defensive coordinator with the Detroit Lions. But you look at what has happened with the Jets over the last few years. You bring in Robert Saleh. He was a great defensive coordinator with the San Francisco 49ers. You had Todd Bowles, great defensive coordinator. He was your head coach. Then you fired him. That didn't work out with him and Sam Darnold. Then you bring in Adam Gase. I don't have that much faith in ownership with Woody Johnson. I think he's a terrible owner. But I like what Aaron Glenn is trying to do. He's trying to reset the culture here. Justin Fields is not a terrible quarterback. And I do believe that he can find mild success. But I don't see him finding that same path that Geno Smith had with the Seattle Seahawks. Many people are trying to compare him to Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. That's two different situations. Geno Smith was a backup quarterback for many years. Oddly enough, the New York Jets, they drafted him in the second round. He couldn't catch on. He was a bad quarterback with the Jets. Then they moved off of him, and he bounced around the NFL. He was a backup quarterback with the Seahawks. Russell Wilson goes down with a finger injury. They put him into the game. They have one more season with Russell Wilson. They push Russell Wilson out the door. They trade him to the Denver Broncos for a lot of draft capital and a very good tight end, Noah Fant. But you had pieces there waiting for Geno Smith, and he had that veteranship from being a backup quarterback. Most people may believe when you're a backup quarterback, you do little to nothing. You hold that clipboard. Yes, you have that earpiece in your ear. You're studying every single day. That's what you do as a backup. The good ones. You're supposed to approach every single week like you're going to play. And that's what Justin Fields did with the Steelers when they set him down for Russell Wilson. And we'll talk about what happened with the Steelers in the next couple of minutes. I just want to talk about what's going on with the Jets over the last few years and why this is a tough situation for young quarterbacks. But you look at Geno Smith. He got the time to sit down, actually develop. He's a good quarterback in the NFL. He's not a superstar. You look at Baker Mayfield, first overall pick. He was a better passer at the University of Oklahoma than Justin Fields was at the Ohio State University. And that's not a detriment to Justin Fields as a player. Baker Mayfield won a Heisman Trophy. Baker Mayfield was amazing. Baker Mayfield was great at Oklahoma. Goes over to the Cleveland Browns, has some up and down years. He goes over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What do the Buccaneers have? A veteran head coach in Todd Bowles who won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator a couple of years before with Tom Brady. Not only just that, you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You have to put pieces out there for your quarterback. That's what it comes down to. And I look at the Jets right now. Garrett Wilson, I love him. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in the game. The man has consistently been a very good player on this team. He's been the main heartbeat with the New York Jets year in and year out, dealing with all that dysfunction. He still finds a way to go out there. He's not a diva. He did not have that chemistry with Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers missed training camp going to outside ventures. You don't have to worry about that with Justin Fields. He's going to show up at training camp. You don't have to worry about Justin Fields complaining and trying to bring in his offensive coordinator. You don't have to worry about him bringing in certain players, making a request to bring in someone like a Devontae Adams, even though Woody Johnson made that move. You don't have to worry about him going on the Pat McAfee show every single week and being a distraction to the team. You don't have to worry about that. So the chemistry should be there on week one. You don't have to worry about him coming out and telling wide receivers to stay on the red line, like how Aaron Rodgers threw Mike Williams underneath the bus. You don't have to worry about those things. So from an outside standpoint, from not playing on the field, from just being a leader, I think that Justin Fields would be better in that locker room. But you need to put more pieces around him. And we have seen this before. The lack of weapons have really stunted his growth. And that's what a lot of teams do. You look at Brock Purdy. He walked into a great situation. And I think that Brock Purdy is a very good quarterback. But he walked into a situation. Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. There is no shame in loading up your team with a young quarterback. That is what you're supposed to do. So I look at the Jets going to the NFL draft some more offensive linemen, draft some wide receivers, and help out Justin Fields. But if it doesn't work out, I'm not going to come on here and say I feel bad for Justin Fields because he chose to come to the New York Jets. The Steelers, they reportedly had an offer for him, but he wanted to leave. I don't blame him leaving the Steelers because they put him into a game manager role. And this is where we get into the film and into things like that with Justin Fields. As a game manager, I thought he performed very well. He didn't play great. He wasn't a top 5, the top 10 quarterback, but he went 4-2. He limited the turnovers and they depended on the defense. That is what the Jets should do. All Justin Fields has to do is make the right read, use his legs in key situations with your brand new offensive coordinator and Coach Tanner, and you should be fine. There is no reason to why Justin Fields cannot go out there, move the chains on 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 3, use his legs, quarterback power him, have him run sideline to sideline with the speed that he has. And you can dink and dunk your way down the field. He showed tight accuracy over and over again with the Steelers in those 6 games. They lost against the Indianapolis Colts. It wasn't all on Justin Fields. They said that he fumbled the football, but his knee and his elbow was down. It was a fumble in the red zone by George Pickens. If you capitalize on those plays, maybe you win that matchup. And from the box score, he performed very well. And I also went back and I watched that game. He made some tight throws in the second half. The game just got out of whack for them. And they lost against the Dallas Cowboys. That was his worst game as a Steeler, but it wasn't all on him. Once again, you only had one wide receiver in George Pickens. I look at the Jets here. I look at Coach Tanner. Now, this is going to come down to him. He's coming over from the Detroit Lions. He has been the offensive coordinator before, not in the NFL, but in the XFL. He was the offensive coordinator for the DC Defenders in 2020 and became the offensive assistant with the Detroit Lions in 2020 also. The most that he's done in the NFL has been a pass game coordinator and tight ends coach. And trust me, if you have PTSD as a Jets fan, I understand. For the ones that don't know, Robert Saleh brought over Coach LaFleur. He was a former pass game coordinator with the 49ers, and he was a terrible offensive coordinator, especially in the red zone. But I look at Justin Fields. He's better right now than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was a complete bust. You look at Justin Fields. If the passing is not there, you defer to his legs. Make this a run-heavy offense. And that's why you have to build up this offensive line. You build up this line all the way through. You have Olu Fashanu at the left tackle position. They had him playing guard when Tyron Smith went down. Let him play left tackle. You have Elijah Vera Tucker who can play right guard and right tackle. The only things that you worry about with him are the injuries. The first 2 years of his career were cut short due to injuries. Since then, he's been a solid offensive lineman. You can move him out to right tackle if you want to, because I look at Carter Warren, he's not going to be a good starting right tackle for you at that position, not for an entire season. And you need to bring in some more interior offensive linemen. The New York Jets, they have talent there. They were just terribly ran last season. And it wasn't even all on the head coach. Most of it was on the owner and Woody Johnson. You have Breece Hall, who in the past has been a very good running back. This season, he had a career low in terms of yards per carry, only 4.2, 5 rushing touchdowns, 876 rushing yards. He hasn't been the same running back since he tore that ACL. But he's a very good running back that you can have in the backfield. Him mixed in with Braylon Allen. And I look at Malachi Corley. Malachi Corley did not do much last season. The only thing that he's known for right now to New York Jets fans is the fact that he dropped the football at the 1-yard line before he ran in for a possible touchdown against the Houston Texans. And I'm happy the Jets won that game. But Malachi Corley, there's talent there. Many people compared him to Deebo Samuel. Maybe you can get something out of him. But you make this a run-heavy offense, make it a conservative offense early on. I know that Justin Fields wants to be the franchise quarterback. Right now, he's not ready for that, and that's okay. Don't just go out there and give him this long leash. Go out there and make life easy on him. Cut off certain sections of the field like how Arthur Smith did. And then you ease into making the deep throws down the field. Then you let him use his legs because Justin Fields, he can get very chaotic with certain reads. We've seen him have 17 passing touchdowns in the season, but he also had 11 interceptions. Those are the most passing touchdowns that he has had in his career, and that was his second year in the NFL. The year after that, 16 passing touchdowns to 9 interceptions with the Steelers. 5 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, but he had 5 rushing touchdowns also. He is not going to be a top 10 passer. It's not going to happen, and it may never happen. But you can have success in the NFL with dual threat quarterbacks. You look at Jalen Hurts right now. He's not one of the best passers in football, but he's easily a top quarterback because of the team they have around him and the fact they cater to his strengths. That is what you have to do. And it comes down to Coach Tanner. And I look at this defense because I'm going to talk about the rest of the team also. Look at Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn, defensive mind, he's going to be great. I don't know if he's going to be a great head coach or not. We'll see. Like I mentioned before, we saw Todd Bowles, former defensive coordinator, was the head coach of the Jets. It didn't really work out. Then you also had Robert Saleh. It never worked out because you never were able to bring in the right quarterback. But I look at the defense that they have. Their defense took a major hit as soon as they fired Robert Saleh. So for all the people that came into my comment section, when I say their defense is going to take a major step back when they fired Coach Saleh, and all the ones that were up in arms saying Coach Brick is great, he's our defensive coordinator. And I said at the time, Robert Saleh is the main defensive play caller. He orchestrates that defense. I just want you guys to remember that for the ones that came out and you know who you are. Their defense should be better off this season than it was last year. Because Aaron Glenn, the one thing that he prides himself on is defense and having a front seven. And we saw the Detroit Lions defense. They performed very well with all the injuries they were dealing with. They were down to their third stringers. They had practice squad players on the field, and yet their defense was still able to hold up in red zone situations. They did collapse against the Washington Commanders, but Jared Goff also had 4 interceptions in that matchup. If Justin Fields goes out there and he limits the turnovers, you could win some games this season. You have Michael Carter II, very good cornerback. You have Sauce Gardner, still one of the best corners in the NFL, had a down year this year. He was a holding machine on the outside, penalized a lot, this entire defense. But Aaron Glenn, he has discipline. You look at what he had with the Detroit Lions. They didn't have those many penalties over the last 2 years because of discipline. Jermaine Johnson missed majority of this season dealing with a torn Achilles. He's a very good player. You have Will McDonald. He was able to come in, give you 10.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. Quinn Williams, one of the best defensive tackles in the game, can stop the run, can get to the passer. You have Michael Clemens also. Expect for the New York Jets to possibly draft an edge rusher in the first round. If they don't go edge rusher, go wide receiver. Go Ted McMillan. Go with him. Big body wide receiver who Justin Fields doesn't have to be very accurate to throw the football to because he has a huge catching radius. And that's the same thing that we saw with Baker Mayfield. A lot of fade balls down the field to Mike Evans. What we saw with Geno Smith, DK Metcalf is a bigger wide receiver, bigger catching radius, throw it down the field. And Ted McMillan, he can win those 50-50 balls. He make 50-50 balls in college look like 90-10. That's the type of talent that he has. Draft him on the outside with Garrett Wilson. And that could easily work out for you if he is there in the first round. You still need an edge rusher, but the way that Aaron Glenn is able to scheme things up with pressure, you should be fine. And especially with Jermaine Johnson coming back from that Achilles injury. The linebacking spot, you have Quincy Williams, you have Jamin Sherwood, very good players. The Jets, they're not going to be a Super Bowl contender. They're not going to be a playoff contender. I'm not saying that. And I'm not trying to come on here and be this huge Justin Fields fan either. But it's a very good option for the Jets to go out there and see what you have in a young quarterback. If it works out, you give him a 2 to 3 year deal of an extension. If it doesn't work out, you move on. And Justin Fields will find work in the NFL as a possible starter, again, depending on how this job falls down. If he fails completely and he looks completely terrible and they bench him for Tyrod Taylor, maybe not so much. But we have seen coaches in the past, they'll take a chance on bringing in someone like a Geno Smith. It may happen later on in his life, but Justin Fields will definitely have a career in the NFL as a backup and as a bridge starter if this doesn't work out. But he's taking a gamble on himself, and I don't blame him. But this is not the same situation as Geno Smith going to the Seahawks, Baker Mayfield going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Sam Darnold going to the Minnesota Vikings. They already had a structure in place with their offense. Right now you have a brand new OC. It's his first time ever calling plays. Give it time. But I'm rooting for Justin Fields, and I'm rooting for the New York Jets. To not have a winning season in 9 years is ridiculous. And it would be very nice to see the New York Jets make the NFL playoffs. But you're in the division right now with the MVP and Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. You have the Miami Dolphins with Tua. As long as Tua's fully healthy, they can win 9 to 10 games, in my opinion. And then you also have the New England Patriots, brand new head coach and Mike Vrabel. He's trying to figure things out right now with Drake May. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about Justin Fields joining the New York Jets, and can he find major success with this organization? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God